What if I revealed to you that there are words capable of awakening dormant codes within you? I'm not talking about motivational quotes, but words imbued with vibration, ancient keys, alchemical formulas of such power that once understood and put into practice, they can radically transform your existence. Does this seem like an exaggerated statement to you? So tell me, why do you feel that sense of emptiness even when every element of your life seems to be in the right place? Why, even though you have achieved goals, paid off debts, and received approvals, a nameless question remains inside you. Is there perhaps something more? Maybe you have never dared to express it openly. Maybe it hides as a silent discomfort, a void that creeps in between thoughts, an indefinite desire towards a horizon that you cannot name. But that subtle restlessness is the signal, that is the call. It does not present itself with clamor or predictions, but manifests itself as a veiled disturbance, as an inexplicable boredom, as a sudden curiosity towards realities that no one around you can grasp. And when it appears, you are not losing your way. You are starting to remember, because every ancient soul, sooner or later, feels that call. And when it makes itself felt, there is no going back. You try to take refuge in routine, but it no longer belongs to you. You try to distract yourself, but an invisible call always brings you back to the same point. You begin to observe too many coincidences to be considered simple coincidences. Dreams that return, numbers that repeat themselves, words that reach you at just the right moment. It is not arbitrary. It is the universe itself that whispers the codes to you. And today, you will finally be able to understand what they are. If these words have touched a deep part of you, leave a like right away. It is not a trivial gesture, it is an energetic seal. So I know that you are not a simple spectator, but someone who is recognizing. And the moment you recognize the truth begins to work for you. That thumbs up, it is our first silent pack. The verb is the beginning of creation. The word has power. What you name, you create. Perhaps you came here thinking that alchemy was just a medieval attempt to turn lead into gold, or that Hermeticism was a collection of cryptic sayings attributed to one Hermes Trismegistus. But few know that behind those ancient words and mysterious symbols lies a living map of the human soul, a spiritual technology encoded in symbolic language, left by sages who knew the secrets of creation. Hermeticism is not just philosophy, it is a science of consciousness. It tells us that everything in the universe is mind, that what is above is the same as what is below, that the visible is a reflection of the invisible, that the external world is only the expression of what vibrates within us. And if this is true, then transforming reality means first of all transforming oneself. This is alchemy, not that of laboratories and smoking alembics, but the internal alchemy, which seeks to transmute the crude being into the awakened being, from the limited ego to the enlightened spirit. And this is where the four words come in. They are not just spiritual advice, they are the four verbs of the great work. Eliphas Levi, a 19th century Hermetic magician, codified this structure in his Dogma and Ritual of High Magic. He did not create anything new. He translated, he reorganized a wisdom already present between the lines of the Corpus Hermeticum, the Emerald Tablet, and even in the Gnostic and alchemical texts of the Renaissance. These verbs are not abstract. They are operational, active principles of spiritual transmutation. Those who know them only intellectually study. Those who live them are transformed. Because true alchemy does not consist in changing the external world, but in burning the ego, distilling the soul, crystallizing the essence. It is polishing the raw spirit until it reveals the gold of awakened consciousness. Each of these verbs represents a crucial stage in that process. They are inscribed in the symbol of the Sphinx, which represents the soul in balance with itself. The human mind is for knowing, spiritual vision is for wanting, courage of the heart is for daring, and the deep silence of the soul is for keeping silent. These four are the pillars of practical Hermeticism, the hidden structure that supports the entire esoteric edifice. In alchemy, These verbs connect to the inner processes of the great work: the burning of the old ego, the purification of the emotions, the elevation of the mind, and the final integration of the spirit. Each verb is like an alchemical reagent, a transformative principle that acts not in the physical world, but in the invisible laboratory of the self. Knowing, wanting, daring, keeping quiet. These are the keys. And now that they have been given to you, let's unlock them one by one to discover their true power. Knowing, the bridge between knowledge and wisdom. Here is a truth that no one has told you. Knowing is not accumulating. It is not reading every spiritual book, writing down every concept, memorizing every symbol as if it were school material, because information without integration is just dead weight. True knowledge is not what you read, it is what pierces you. It is what transforms you when you stop trying to understand and allow yourself to feel. The kind of knowledge that Hermeticism alludes to is not intellectual, it is vibrational. In Kabbalah, there is a sphere called Da'at, which many do not even officially include in the map of the Tree of Life. It is not there like the others. It is hidden, invisible. And why? Because Da'at represents the void between knowledge and wisdom. What you know with your mind becomes wisdom only when it passes through the heart and is embodied in your actions. What fills that void? Experience, awareness, the silence among the noise, the mistake that has taught you more than 100 pages of any book. If you want a concrete example, look at Solomon, the king who could have asked for anything: wealth, fame, power over nations. But do you know what he asked for? Understanding, clarity, wisdom to judge justly. And that is why, according to ancient tales, he became not only the wisest, but also the most prosperous, because where there is wisdom, abundance flows naturally. Wisdom is the foundation that holds up the temple. Without it, every achievement sooner or later collapses. Knowing is like lighting a torch in the darkness of ignorance. But the flame does not last on theory alone. It needs spiritual oxygen. It needs you to look at the world with clean eyes, without the dirty lenses of inherited beliefs, other people's opinions, or fear-based filters. Knowing is seeing patterns in chaos. It is finding lessons in conflict. It is looking inside yourself even when everything in you wants to escape. In alchemy, this stage is compared to nigredo, putrefaction, the symbolic death of what you thought you knew, so that from the ashes of ignorance a new vision can be born. Knowledge does not come before darkness. It is born right in the midst of it. It is built when you allow yourself not to know, when you question, unlearn, deconstruct. Only then do you reach the philosophical gold of wisdom. Hermeticism has always pointed this out. Hermes Trismegistus wrote, "Ignorance is the greatest evil, and self-knowledge is the greatest good." But self-knowledge is not an idea. It is a silent revelation that only happens when you honestly immerse yourself in your shadow, when you stop repeating what others say and start listening to what your soul has to say. And perhaps this is the most forgotten key to true knowledge. It is humble. It does not need to shout, demonstrate, or convince. It simply is. It manifests itself in the posture, in the look, in the quality of presence. A person who truly knows can transform a room without uttering a word, because his field vibrates on another frequency. And this does not come from the ego. It comes from being connected to what really matters. The will that creates reality. Now that the torch is lit, that the flame of knowing has illuminated the inner cave of consciousness, something begins to move. It is subtle but intense, as if something pulsates inside you that wants to express itself, to free itself from staticity, from passive contemplation. It is the will that awakens, and I am not talking about desire. Do not confuse the two. Desire is changeable. Today you want one thing, tomorrow another. Desire is emotion mixed with impulse, often fueled by fear, lack, or comparison. But true will is different. What we are talking about here is not the will of the ego. It is the silent call of the soul. That will that does not shout but vibrates, that does not need applause or confirmation, that arises from within like a wordless certainty. Once you feel it, you cannot ignore it. It pierces you like an arrow, and no matter how long it takes, how many obstacles appear or what others say, it remains there, intact. True will does not ask permission. It is the original breath that put you on this planet. It is what reminds you that you are not here just to survive, but to express something unique, something that only you can bring into existence. In Hermeticism, this inner force is seen as creative power, the same that moves the stars, the cycles of nature, the silent dance of cosmic laws. This is why Hermes Trismegistus said, "What is within is reflected without." Because when your will is aligned with the core of your being, it echoes throughout the universe. The will becomes command, vibration, creation. In alchemy, that will is the hidden fire, the heat that warms the hermetic vessel. Without it, there is no transmutation. The lead of unawareness does not become spiritual gold without that flame. And here we are not talking about wanting a new car, a better job, a perfect relationship. These are ephemeral desires. The alchemical will is what brings you home, what draws you to your mission, even if you cannot yet define it. It acts as an invisible compass that points to the true north of the soul. This will separate those who awaken from those who only dream, because the world is full of people who know, who understand, who repeat beautiful phrases but do not act, because they lack this strength. They lack this will that truly burns, that burns in the chest like a call that cannot be silenced. Have you ever felt it, that deep intuition that there is something you have to do, live, manifest, and that only you can do it? That's what we're talking about. And when that will awakens, nothing else satisfies you. You can try to distract yourself, to go back to your old life, to follow the script written for you, but something in you has already been touched, and you can't pretend you didn't feel it. That's true alchemy. Not the kind that transforms objects, but the kind that transforms direction. Because when your will is aligned with your essential self, with what you came here for, everything else starts to make sense. The pieces of the puzzle fit together. Coincidences stop being random. You realize that the universe wasn't against you. It was just waiting for you to remember who you are. Dare, the courage to demonstrate. But wanting, however real, is not enough. Because even when the heart cries out, even when the soul begs to be lived, there is still a guardian at the door of change, fear. And this is where the third verb comes in, daring. Daring is moving forward despite the trembling body. It is acting even with the doubt that hammers in the head. It is standing in front of the unknown and saying, "I may not know what awaits me, but I refuse to remain stuck." How many times have you known exactly what you had to do? You felt the direction, you had clarity, you had that moment when everything in you said, "Go." But you didn't do it. You got stuck. You brooded too much, you asked for advice from those who have never walked your path, you shrank in front of your own greatness. It happens to almost everyone because knowing and wanting are still internal, but daring requires flesh. It requires presence. It demands that you leave the world of ideas and put your feet on the ground. Daring is setting alchemy in motion. It is the moment when theory becomes life, when the word becomes flesh, when the invisible begins to take shape. And no, it does not have to be perfect. You do not need all the answers, all the resources, or all the skills. Daring does not wait for everything to be ready. It is the force itself that creates the path as it travels. It is what opens paths where there were only walls. It transforms chaos into art, limits into momentum. In the Hermetic tradition, this is crystal clear. The universe does not respond to words. It responds to action, to risk, to energy set in motion. The law of vibration is not activated by intention alone. It vibrates through action. It is in the step that the ground appears. It is in the leap that the wings unfold. Daring is not showing off. It is honoring yourself. It is doing what your spirit has already decided. even when your personality is full of doubts. It is saying yes to your soul, yes to what pulsates inside, even if no one else understands it, even if no one else approves. It is having the courage to embody your truth, even if it is still only a whisper. In alchemy, this is the moment when the fire begins to boil, when the raw material stirs inside the athanor, the phase in which the heat of the will begins to transform what is dense, rigid, hardened. And that heat comes from audacity, from action, from practice. It doesn't matter if the ritual is small, if the gesture is simple. Lighting a candle with intention can be more powerful than an entire library of unused theory. Writing a real sentence on paper can be more transformative than repeating empty formulas. Putting the body in motion is signing an energetic contract with the invisible. Daring is putting yourself on the line. It is recognizing that you will never feel completely ready. That fear will not magically disappear, but that there is something in you stronger than it, and that something needs to be lived. Keep silent, the forgotten art of protecting the sacred. And it is precisely at this point in the journey, when the movement has already begun, when the fire is already lit, that the final key appears, the most subtle, the most overlooked, and perhaps for this reason the most powerful. Keep silent. Silence is not omission. It is not passivity. It is not the absence of action. Silence is conscious containment. It is vibrational maturity. It is when you understand that not everything that is sacred needs to be exposed, that not every process needs to be shared, that there are moments in which silence is more transformative than 1,000 words. Because silence in the spiritual path is not empty, it is a vessel. The alchemist knows that every internal process is fragile in the early stages, like a newly planted seed. If you expose it too much, it will not germinate. If you talk about it too much, you waste energy. If you share it with those who do not understand, you hand over your creation to the judgment of those who cannot see. And this is where many get lost. They want to share, explain, convince, demonstrate. But what is maturing inside you needs protection, not exposure. Silence preserves the fire. It keeps the heat inside the hermetic vessel. It is no coincidence that the ancient occultists called this practice initiatory silence, because silence is not just the absence of sound. It is a field of energetic concentration. It is where power accumulates, where magic solidifies before manifesting. Speaking too soon is like opening the oven before the bread is baked. You lose the moment, you cool the process. In Hermeticism, this silence is reverence. It is respect for the intelligence of the invisible. Hermes Trismegistus was called thrice great because, among other things, he knew when to speak and when to be silent. The word holds power, but silence holds wisdom, and only those who have learned to contain can truly create. And it's not just about keeping your plans or spiritual practices to yourself, it's about silencing the noise in your mind, silencing the need for validation, turning off the urge to justify every step. There's a freedom that only silence can offer, the freedom to be whole without being recognized, the freedom to hold your light without others seeing it. Yet in alchemy, silence is the final stage before manifestation. It is when matter has already been worked, transmuted, heated, dissolved, and now needs to rest, settle, integrate. Silence here is not the end. It is the space in which the new begins to take shape. It is in silence that the philosopher's gold solidifies. It is in silence that the spirit finds its home. Do you see? Silence is not hiding. It is preserving. It is choosing the right moment to reveal. It is understanding that the sacred has a rhythm, has a time, has layers, and that not everything that is real needs to be said, because some things only flourish in the dark, and true power is often forged in silence. And in that moment when everything seems to fall silent, when you have walked the inner paths of knowing, wanting, and daring, when you have learned to be silent to guard what is forming, something subtle begins to happen. A strange but familiar sensation, as if you had been here before, as if the journey, instead of leading you to a final destination, was taking you back, but not to the same point, to a higher one, as if time were circular, not linear, as if the soul were dancing in a spiral. It is in this exact moment that you understand what the ancient masters have always known. True wisdom is not linear, it moves in cycles, in twirls that seem like repetitions, but are actually expansions. And it is in this living cycle that the four verbs reveal themselves as sacred cogs in a single mechanism. They are not steps on a ladder, they are directions on a wheel that turns inside you. For deep silence does not lead to an end, it brings you back to the beginning. But now, the knowledge that arises is no longer theoretical, mental, or repetitive. It is embodied. It arises from fertile silence, from the space where noise has dissolved and listening has flourished. It is the kind of knowledge that does not need to be sought. It simply emerges. It appears as clear intuition, as clear perception, as a calm presence that observes without judgment. This new knowledge is different from the first. It does not want to prove anything. It is not in a hurry for answers. It does not feed on urgency. It simply observes, perceives, integrates. And precisely because it is quieter, it is more truthful. It does not need to defend itself. And for this reason, it ignites a new will, which this time is no longer moved by desire or impulse. It is a calm will, a will that is born from the inner certainty that there is something that must be born and that is ready. And when this new will is established, it does not arrive alone. It brings with it the renewed energy of action. But now, daring is no longer a leap into the unknown. It is a conscious step supported by past experience, guided by a will already refined and illuminated by a knowledge born of silence. Action is no longer noise. It becomes a precise gesture, an aligned movement, an intelligent manifestation. The inner alchemy begins to boil again. The matter of the soul, which has already passed through the fire, which has already faced chaos, now organizes itself on another level. And soon, almost naturally, the cycle calls for another pause, a new silence, a new moment to be silent. But now not as an interruption, but as continuity, as if it were the very breath of the soul. Inhale, act, exhale, retreat. And in this hidden rhythm, consciousness expands, without tears, without shortcuts, only presence. This is where the symbol of the serpent begins to make sense. The ancient mysterious image of the serpent biting its own tail, Ouroboros, the eternal return, the image that represents one of the greatest secrets of the Hermetic tradition. Everything is connected, everything is recycled, everything is transformed to be reborn with more truth. The serpent does not destroy itself by devouring itself. It perpetuates itself, it reinvents itself. This cycle is not a prison, it is evolution. Each turn of the serpent is a deeper level of yourself that is reached. What once seemed like repetition now reveals itself as maturation. The soul begins to learn its own language. The seeker begins to recognize the signs with greater sensitivity. Old lessons return, but in a new light. The same symbol now with a different meaning. The same silence now with more presence. The same will, but with more direction. And it is in this rhythm of return and rebirth that the great work occurs. Not as a sudden miracle, but as a constant refinement. A cycle that turns not to return to the starting point, but to raise it. To make the beginning a new level, to make the invisible ever clearer, to make the sacred ever more intimate. The time of courage that acts in the present, the archetypal union of four forces, the man, the lion, the ox, and the eagle. Four creatures not chosen at random. Each represents one of the verbs. Each holds a secret of the human soul. They are the faces of the same conscience, the pillars that support the throne of inner sovereignty. The human face is knowing, intelligence, reflection, search for meaning. The wings of the eagle are the will, vision that sees beyond the mountains, desire to reach the high. The paws of the lion are daring, raw courage, roar that tears through fear. And the body of the ox is silence, stability, silent patience, strength that supports without haste. Together, these figures form more than an enigma. They form the portrait of human nature educated by the light of the Spirit. Because true spirituality does not deny instinct, does not repress the flesh, does not judge the animal that lives in us. It transforms, it integrates, it leads the beast to the sky without tearing it from the earth. The beast must not be destroyed, it must be deified. And this is living alchemy. It is looking inside oneself with brutal honesty, seeing the anger, the desire, the vanity, the fear, and not running away, but also not giving in. It is dialoguing with each of these forces and saying, now you serve the conscience. Now you walk with me. This is what transforms an ordinary human into a true magician. He has learned to tame his monsters, not to hide them, but to convert them into creative power. And when you recognize the Sphinx within you, something changes. The inner world realigns. What was once chaos becomes structure. You begin to feel that you have a foundation, that you can trust what you feel, that you no longer have to divide yourself between who you are inside and who you try to appear to be outside. The beast becomes a temple, and it is in that temple that true action becomes possible, because there is no longer time to wait. Have you noticed how many times you have put off what you knew you had to do? Waiting for the right day, the right money, the right scenario, the right sign. But that day never comes because the mind will always create a new excuse. It will always say, it's not time yet, this is missing, that is missing. But the heart already knows. It has been ready all along. Magic happens in the present. Transformation begins with the simple. Spiritual life does not require castles or golden altars. It begins with what you have, with what you can do today. A conscious breath, an unspoken word, a truthful look, an honest choice. This is what creates the cracks in the old reality and makes room for the new to enter. If you can't make a paper ring work, you won't make a gold ring work either, because it's not the object that holds the power, it's the intention you put into it, it's the commitment you bring to the practice. There is no point in knowing everything, wanting everything, daring everything, if you do not allow yourself to act, and to act with what you have in your hands right now. This is the difference between the dreamer and the doer. The time of courage is the present, and the present is the only real time. But there is still something that must be said, something that perhaps you have felt but never named. Because even after having acted, even after having lived the cycle, even after having touched the sacred, there is a space in which everything returns to silence. And that silence is not absence, it is presence. We are surrounded by an incessant din, submerged by voices, judgments, demands that demand our attention. Every moment the world presses us, urging us to deviate, to run, to measure ourselves with others. Yet the great work does not impose itself with clamor. It speaks softly. It reveals itself gradually. It demands openness. It demands silence. Authentic knowledge does not feed on verbal overabundance. It lives in attentive listening, in confidentiality, in what you choose not to show, not to divulge, not to explain. Some truths acquire meaning only in the intimacy of the secret. The soul has its own vocabulary, and not everything that is sacred can be exposed to distracted glances. In Hermetic wisdom, silence is the guardian of truth. It is not absence. It is a fertile womb in which the next Genesis matures. It is an insurmountable boundary to external chaos. It is the refuge where the spirit is regenerated. He who has learned the art of silence has learned to protect himself. He has understood how to guard his own light without the need to show it off. Because what is authentic does not seek audiences. The secret work of the soul is not proclaimed. It shines through in the quality of your being there. It is reflected in the look that consoles, in the gesture that heals, in the decision that honors the path. And this work flourishes only where silence is fertile ground, where space preserves the mystery intact. Because ultimately, It is precisely this that sustains everything, a profound reverence for the invisible. If this path has opened a threshold within you, make it manifest. Express a like if you have perceived an inner movement. Leave a comment with a single word. What is the term that has remained engraved within you? Write it below. It is not a comment. It is a seal that reactivates the memory of the soul. My word, gold, because everything that is burned authentically is purified. Sign up if you wish to continue this journey. We do not count numbers. We weave knots in a shared network. Your every gesture is a golden thread in the fabric of those who, like you, are searching. May you feel from now on the thrill of being exactly in the destined place. See you soon, beyond the veil. The way continues.